Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Master Series, your guide to intelligent production, brought to you by Entertainment Partners. I'm your host, Natalie Nelson. In the Master Series, we focus on important issues impacting the entertainment industry and its workers through in-depth discussion with legal, tax, payroll, technology, and production experts. And today's topic is solving the crew shortage, and we'll be discussing the critical need for training programs for production crew and how new programs offered across the country are offering productions relief. Two quick housekeeping items as we get started today. First is that you may post questions for our panelists using the Q&A section of the Zoom call. You can do so by clicking the Q&A icon in the Zoom navigation menu, and we'll do our best to save time after our discussion to answer questions. Also, please take 30 seconds to answer a short feedback survey after today's webinar. This includes the opportunity for you to give us feedback on today's topic, as well as to suggest topics for future webinars. Your feedback is very important to us, so 30 seconds is all that we ask. Now let's meet today's panel. Today, we are joined by Amber Dodson, Director of the New Mexico Film Office. Amber brings deep experience in the private sector industries, including entertainment, media, and tech, having roles in production, marketing and advertising, and business development. In 2019, she was appointed to the Albuquerque New Film Office by Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller. Under her tenure, the Albuquerque was ranked #1 by Movie Maker magazine as best place to live and work in 2019, and Deadline Hollywood named New Mexico the hotspot of 2020. She was then appointed by New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham in 2020 to lead the New Mexico State Film Office. Since then, she has led New Mexico Film Office to record-breaking growth in production in 2021. Also with us is executive producer and production manager, Georgia Chianese. Georgia is former president of physical production at Paramount and one of the most sought-after producers in film today. Among her notable credits are collaborations with acclaimed directors, including John Sayles, Jim Jarmusch, Steven Soderbergh, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, and Quentin Tarantino. Her most recent project is the forthcoming J.J. Abrams pilot, Duster, for HBO Max. We are also joined today by Jeffrey Stepikoff, Executive Director of the Georgia Film Academy, writer, producer, and academic with a 35-year entertainment career, including internationally recognized credits, leadership roles in content creation and production management. His notable credits include more than 200 episodes of popular television, including the Emmy-winning The Wonder Years and Dawson's Creek, for which he was co-executive producer. Until July 2015, he worked as co-executive producer of Chasing Life for ABC Family, a position he left to become the executive director of the Georgia Film Academy. Under his leadership, the Academy has trained over 8,000 Georgians, rapidly becoming recognized by the industry as the gold standard for production workforce training, and serving as a model for diversity and inclusivity and setting standards for practical education and pathways to employment. Also with us is John C. Williams, co-founder and executive director of ReelWorks. John is an award-winning film and television writer, producer, and director whose credits include independent shorts, features, documentaries, television programming, and corporate communications. Founded in 2001, ReelWorks has been twice recognized by the White House as one of the top arts programs in the U.S., and over half of all ReelWorks alumni make their careers in media and entertainment. In 2019, ReelWorks launched Media Makers, bringing together industry leaders, employers, educators, labor leaders, and the New York Mayor's Office to build inclusive pathways to careers in media for talented young New Yorkers. Prior to founding ReelWorks, John created original television for WNET 13, Oxygen, We, and Metro channels. We are also pleased to be joined by Tyrone Robinson, Training Enablement Manager here at the EP Academy at Entertainment Partners. Tyrone has over 15 years of training experience, the last 4 of which he has spent in the payroll industry as an enablement and client-facing product trainer at Entertainment Partners. During his tenure at EP, Tyrone has worked to establish the EP Academy, which provides training solutions that complement our goal of being the production partner to the industry and driving the evolution of entertainment through technology. And finally, today's guest moderator is Joseph Chianese, Senior Vice President and Production Incentive Practice Leader here at EP, where he provides production incentive legislative consulting, financial, tax, and administrative services for domestic and international production incentives. Joe has over 35 years of accounting, government affairs, and production incentives and tax experience, and has formerly held positions at Sony Pictures Entertainment, the Walt Disney Company, ABC Television Network, Paramount Pictures, and Ernst & Young. Welcome, Joe and panelists. It is so nice to see all of you today. Thank you for joining us for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Natalie, and welcome panelists and welcome viewers. So we know the industry is experiencing an unprecedented boom in production, and there's really no expectation for it to end anytime soon. And so Entertainment Partners feels that every day with the volume of payroll that we're producing, but more specifically with the requests that we get for production accountants and line producers. So there's really a critical need for crew. So today we're going to try our best to highlight just some of the programs that are available, trying to fill that need and keep up with the pace of the content that's being produced today. So we're really honored to be doing this because from my perspective, I just really get this feeling that there are producers that don't really know where to look for workers. And then there are people looking for work who don't really know where to go. And we'll kind of talk more about this later, but one of our panelists, Georgia, used a term when we were talking earlier, but sort of shaking the tree to sort of find folks. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because we can't rely on the existing crew base because maybe one of them, folks are aging out, but two, the volume is just so unprecedented. There's just not enough folks. And three, there's really a lot of opportunity for folks who don't really know about these jobs. So we're going to do our best today to sort of highlight all that. But I thought the best way to start was maybe get a state of the industry and see where we stand today. And I thought maybe we'd start with Amber to give us a sense of what's going on in New Mexico, which has really, blossomed to becoming a very sought after destination for film and TV production. So I'll let her give us a sense of what's going on there, because I think that's a great representation of what's going on in the US and around the world. So Amber.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for the invitation to be on this amazing panel. I admire the work of all of you guys. So right now, you're right. New Mexico has been booming. It has been for several years since the new film incentive took effect in 2019. We've seen record-breaking growth. In fiscal year 21, we broke all records in the history of film here in New Mexico, topping about 625 or 6 million indirect spend. A lot of that can be attributed to our incentive that's now highly competitive, but also we have, industry long-term commitment partners, Netflix and NBCU, who are here for the long haul, here for a decade, committing to providing thousands of jobs for New Mexico residents and committing to, between the two studios, $2.5 billion in spend minimum over the 10-year period. So that, anchored with our world-class crew that's been around for a long time, our soundstage infrastructure, the locations, the businesses here, it's all been really busy and booming. And we actually see that growth isn't stopping. We're going to probably break records again. And now we're looking to sign the dotted line with another studio partner. So there's a lot of momentum. And as you said, Joe, this industry is growing globally, and we want to keep a seat at that table and be at the forefront. So it's a thrilling time to be here in film in New Mexico.
Amber, two things. One, I just want to highlight, because New Mexico, when it first started incentives in 2002, did something that got a bit of criticism, but it was an intentional decision whereby the below the line crew was limited to residents only. And that was intentional to sort of build a crew base, because we all know that, you really learn on the job, right? So basically the thought was, the residents would learn by just getting jobs and moving up the ranks. That's changed as things got busier in the state. You now allow non-residents. Most recently, I think as of yesterday, Illinois just changed their legislation and truly enhanced their program to now allow non-residents as well. So again, it just further emphasizes how, the states are opening up opportunity for more production, and we just need more production workers. I wanted to also give Tyrone a chance to chat about, as we develop courses at AP, Tyrone, so what kind of sort of courses, or what I should say, where do you see the most need when people are sort of reaching out to EP in terms of the type of skills that they'd like to see enhanced?
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Thank you for having me on this panel. From what we actually see, one of the biggest needs in the production accounting world is production accountants. as well as payroll accountants as well. We are currently developing a course on how to break a time card, which is a good course for people to kind of get their feet wet. We walk them through, from A to Z on that particular process. And it's really filling a need for the production community, as, these are the type of courses that we're getting requests for.
So, Georgia, I'm going to have you shake the tree now a little bit and just give your producer perspective, because not only is there such a need for crew, but the industry is really changing, right? We're seeing such a shift from feature film to more TV in the world of streaming. There's this choice: do I stay domestic with my productions or do I go international? A lot of times that's driven by incentives, but I do know in talking to clients that incentives is not the sole driver anymore. It is, where is the crew and where is their infrastructure, like stages. So I just would love to get your perspective about what's happening in the industry today and where it may be headed.
Yeah, that's very true. One thing I want to point out is that in states like in the Chicago rebate you were talking about, and even in New Mexico, any established incentive destination that is in LA or New York, you're constantly running up against issues of who is going to choose a long-term television series versus who's going to be available to, and unfortunately, sometimes that's the best crew, the ones who want to stay home. A lot of people did relocate to New Mexico, which was, great for productions coming in, but a lot of those people are choosing to stay on the longest, whatever's the most lucrative project. And so then even if you have a big feature coming in for a short period of time or for a long period of time, it all needs to balance out, because there might be 2 or 3 seasons of that. And I think that's what Chicago, you're eventually forced to open your incentive up to other people, unless you're just happy in your little niche, because you have to have more manpower. Things have not only, the other change that we hit that you didn't mention is really that people in the feature world, because I think we were predominantly features 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then when television really bloomed, what we lost is our second tier. So we still had production designers, a production designer can design a TV show or could design a feature film, but the lead man, the set decorator, all the art directors who are under them, all of this TV and streaming content gave those people opportunities to now, try their craft as a designer. So the feature film world is kind of suffering the most right now, because there's so much content, and some of the traditional crews that would just go up the ranks in feature films are now branching off and, able to do department head work somewhere else. So that shifted things. But yes, I think the bottom line is that, this recent surge has made it harder in every incentive state for people to find local crew. And I'm sure, Amber, there's probably, I don't know how busy you were last year, because you were so busy, but, a lot of the shows that came in, 12th, 13th, 14th show, did end up bringing the majority of their crew from LA. And that must have had an impact on you. And then there's always the criticism of are the people who are coming in experienced enough to work on your show, so then you're constantly swapping out labor too, because you try somebody, maybe they're not up to speed, and then you have to bring somebody from LA, and there's all costs involved in all that kind of change. But I think primarily that's kind of a longer term issue of how do the people who are entering the industry then progress in the industry. And right now, there's really no format for that. That's just, if you're good at your job, you're going to get hired on multiple projects. But I think it is, I was fascinated to see what you were doing in Georgia and in the UK, the screen skills.
Yeah.
And John, what you're doing in New York. I mean, and I love this EP. I listen to all kinds of EP webinars that have nothing to do with anything that I do, but I just, I find it fascinating because you're always going to learn something. But anyway, that's, I think it's essential that there's the feeding into the industry. And, my curiosity is also like, so we feed in, we train at the entry level, and then what's going on? Are the unions helping to bridge the gap? It sounds like with some of the locals, they're allowing you to get people onto productions at a very entry level place, but then are the unions then picking up the ball and going, okay, now you know what the equipment looks like, how a set runs, here's the next level of learning your craft, outside of people going to film school, because people don't go to film school to become a best boy grip. Right. They go to become a cinematographer or a director. Anyway, so those are my multiple takes on things.
So I know you just wrapped doing a series, and I think you did it in Arizona. Was there, if you had to pinpoint one specific job, or what was sort of where you felt the biggest hole in terms of where there was a deep crew bench for a specific position?
Well, what you want to know is that you have grip and electric, depending on your show. You might have big lighting needs, you might have night lighting, you might be in a million different locations. So you've got packages coming in and out. And it really is almost a matter of like, do we have enough bodies, so that we can spread people out this way? So it's like, grip and electric, set decorators, and not set decorators, but, set dressers, all those technical groups of teams that are big, and then, that brings us to construction. And we had the unbelievable experience of being, needing construction people, going to LA, being told that there's nobody left. Basically, the local said, just hire whoever you want, just run it through us and hire whoever you want. So we got a few people from LA, and then in Tucson, we went around to contractors. I mean, that's how busy it was last summer and fall, that because the show almost got shut down because we couldn't finish our sets. So we just went around, we got like 32 guys that had all kinds of skills. None of them, experienced in the film business. And we had a great construction coordinator who was able to wrangle everybody, and we did get our sets built, thank God. But, construction is another field where the skill set is in most cities in America. We just were looking at a boom time for them post-COVID, during COVID, where that industry was just making money hand over fist. And then, we couldn't find anybody who was trained in film, which is worse on the scenic side than it is on the construction side. But yeah, so I would say all those areas were tough for us, but we were a small enough show that, and we were close enough to LA. So we kind of used LA as if we were local to LA. And for Grip and Electric, the labor was there. And so we could bring people in for the periods we needed and then send them back. And it wasn't a big expense to do that.
You really did have to shake the tree.
Hello. Yes, we did.
So Jeffrey, Georgia has been one of, if not the busiest production hub in the U.S. And the Georgia Film Academy has been supporting that growth for the last 7 years. And I remember doing a panel with you, I think it was 2 years ago, where we represented that most shows in Georgia, 85% of the crew are residents. So maybe you could talk a bit about the Georgia Film Academy and where the Georgia Film Academy is seeing the most need. But I also want to use the word a bit more in this. It's not just need, but opportunity. Because I think, again, there are a lot of folks out there. I mean, I teach at a lot of different schools, and you're sitting in a room and all these folks want to be, as Georgia said, cinematographers or directors or producers, and you rattle off the possibility of being a production accountant. And they're like, Oh, wow. I didn't even know that existed. Debits and credits. So anyway, tell us what you're seeing in Georgia and the Georgia Film Academy, Jeffrey.
I would love to. I always love to talk about film in Georgia, and thanks for having me here today, Joseph. Very much appreciated, and what an honor and what fun to share the screen with such accomplished colleagues. Boy, Georgia, super simply, what's been driving our business is not a secret. It's the so-called three-legged stool, right? It's the film tax credit, the infrastructure, and crew. If there's a secret sauce, as I like to say, to what's really been behind, I believe, Georgia's film industry, and perhaps more specifically, the Academy, the Film Academy, it's been this spirit of partnership. I think that's what we've really gotten right. It's not just an amazing story, it's an exciting story to tell. If you look at all the diverse stakeholders, from the labor unions to the state leadership, to the universities, and I mean all of them, to the technical colleges, and I mean all of them, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, the private sector, everyone coming together. This has been the driver, again, the secret sauce here. So what I like to say is, in fact, just a little context. In 2007, for the credit passed, we had about $25 million here in Georgia that was spent by productions. Last fiscal year, $4 billion spent by productions here in Georgia. I believe it was 352 productions worked here, over 100,000 Georgians working, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the secret sauce for this over 4,000% increase in production activity in barely 13 years has been everyone coming together to get it right and to, frankly, put Georgians to work. So how did we do it briefly? Perhaps the most succinct way I can explain it is by telling you what we didn't do. And that would be back in 2013, 2014, when the credit was really kicking in and when infrastructure from the private sector was similarly kicking in, studio sound stages, vendor support services, et cetera, there was a real concern about whether we had enough Georgians to do all this work. So what the state didn't do, I believe, would have been the old school model. And that would have been, hey, we need crew for our film industry. Let's create a film school, right? Let's create a Tisch or a Florida State or a North Carolina School of the Arts, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, what the state did really had no model. And that is back in 2015, the state said, you know what? We're going to use the existing resources, not of one institution, but the entire public university system and the existing resources of the entire technical college system. And we're going to get everyone to come together and work on this. So I believe, as I had mentioned earlier, one of the first things we did was to reach out to the labor unions, roll up our sleeves and ask for help. We hired union members, veterans, to help us design the course curriculum and ultimately to teach for us. The Film Academy today leases space, soundstage space, at some locations, notably at Trilith Studios, OFS. We're going to be located in Savannah soon. We're down in Columbus. And in short, we put Georgians to work, not from one individual area, not from one individual school, but from all over the state. And to this end, Georgia Film Academy students, and actually there's been over 11,000 student registrations since we started in 2015. Georgia Film Academy students are 52% people of color, 49.5% women, so we could say 50% women, and all ages from 18 up until the 60s are represented at the Film Academy. And so what that means is also that representation now, of course, carries over into the workforce here. So that's answering your question, Joseph, with a focus on the Film Academy, a little bit of context of what we're doing here in Georgia. But I hope that sets the stage for work that my colleagues and I are super proud to get up and do every day.
It certainly does. And I wanted to jump to John because, John, I remember the Mayor Adams released called his Rebuild, Renew, and Reinvent, a blueprint for New York City's economic development. And as part of that, he mentioned the importance of diversity and equity and inclusion, and also the importance of the entertainment and media industry as part of that economic development. Maybe you could talk a bit about DEI and RealWorks and how you so that all fits together in terms of what you're doing and where you see it's going.
Yeah, I'll say that, my perspective as an educator, I started RealWorks with my wife 21 years ago now. So we've been teaching young filmmakers and mostly in Brooklyn, but all around the city. And the evolution of our getting involved with workforce readiness was really a process of watching our young people grow up and watching them express their talent and their passion for filmmaking, and also individual crafts of filmmaking as well, not just, and then seeing them stumble out of school, out of high school, out of college, and seeing the barriers that were in the way for them for working in the industry. Historically, RealWorks, over half of our graduates are working in the industry. So really we're doing well in building, an inclusive industry and workforce in New York. But we knew we could do more. And then we reflected on what we could do with that. We're a relatively small boutique nonprofit in Brooklyn. We serve about 1,700 kids across the city, but that's really not a lot in the scale of what the challenge is. The crisis of inclusion on set and on screen and behind the scenes that we want to address. So we thought the one thing we could do would be to be a catalyst for different stakeholders coming together. We had already been working with very closely with studios, specifically Viacom, CBS, now Paramount, Warner Media, long-term partners of ours, funders of our work. It was very easy to get them involved and supportive of this effort. And so we thought we created the program Media Makers to bring together educators like RealWorks and other nonprofits like us, but ultimately public education, New York City Public Schools and the City University of New York, which is the largest urban university in the world. Bring the employers in the room. We were very fortunate enough early on to bring the IATSC into the room as a partner. And what was exciting about those first meetings was that the conversations were a little different because we realized that most of these folks were in rooms with people like them. Educators were talking to educators, employers were talking to employers, labor was talking to labor. Of course, they're talking to the employers as well, but often off on the other side of a table. And there weren't really collaborative conversations. That initial group of companies that have come together is now 75 employers that partner with us. We got some investment from the mayor's office. So I'm a big fan of Mayor Adams. It was Mayor de Blasio and his team that really invested in our program and made Media Makers a citywide program. And there are two efforts involved. The first one is internships and classroom to career access. Helping young people get, workforce readiness training and those first paid on-the-job experiences in high school and in college, or if they don't go to college, for out of school, out of work young people to get jobs in the industry under the internship model. But what we do differently is we make sure they do multiple internships over time. So they learn, they call that career exploration. So maybe they'll be at a post house. Maybe they'll like that. Maybe they won't like that. No, maybe they're working at a production company. Maybe they get involved, they discover audience development at Disney ABC is the best job they ever had, and they want to go into that. It's they learn about all the different jobs. So career exploration is really important, and it's always paid. Always paid. No one works for free. One of the biggest barriers to inclusion in this industry is the practice and expectation that people entering the industry have to work for free to give their time. Our young people, they have two things against them, and the only two things against them, they have an abundance of talent. But they often don't have driver's licenses, which is a real problem, and they can't work for free. And also, they don't have a family member in the business. The second piece of our tool, our program, is the job training program, what we call career development. That happened unplanned. That happened with Netflix approaching us while we were developing a conversation with the union about funding a union training. So in 2019, we piloted our first studio mechanics boot camp with the IATSC Local 52 Studio Mechanics Local in New York, training electricians funded by Netflix. And that program has been renewed. We're interviewing GRIP candidates right behind me in the office today for the new GRIP training, which is the first training back from COVID. And we're working with two other locals in New York. We're partnering with the IATSC International and creating a strategy and getting outside funders, companies, and other sources to fund it. So we're working with the unions and also working with companies like Warner Media to train post-production coordinators and supervisors, all driven, as you said in the top, by this increased cadence of production and the need to elevate people more quickly than the traditional mentoring system would have worked. And what has been good and is different, being at this for a long time, is the companies are really willing to pay for inclusive practices and training young people. Because the one thing I know from 20 years of doing this, the talent is there. The diverse 90% of our participants are young people of color, and they have all the talent and drive to succeed. And like you, we want to be the connector between the people who are hiring and the people who are looking, because there's something broken in the middle, and that's what Media Makers is meant to address.
I really appreciate you saying that, John. And I would only say regarding this webinar, the only thing that's a little disappointing is that we're not going to be able to cover everything that's out there. We're going to touch more on the unions, but just to mention that all the states are very active in training. I know the California Film Commission is, and also the industry as well. I know NBC announced in February that they're calling the California Below the Line traineeship, where they are taking or mentoring underrepresented talent and getting them on set experience. So there's a lot happening. And so going back to my point before, I'm going to make sure that I post as much as I can on the EP production community in terms of resources, whether it's the unions or different courses that are available. Because again, it's that link, as we keep saying, that's sort of being missing. We know that the education's there. We know that there's jobs that are needed or that need to be filled, I should say, but there's sort of the link that's missing. So I want to jump back to Georgia for a second and maybe just sort of ask from a traditional sense, because I know things are changing, but how did production workers traditionally get trained before? It is, again, somebody who never worked on a set. For me, I always felt it really was almost like very much an apprenticeship, right? You basically started from the bottom up and you sort of just, you learned on the job. And that's changing.
Absolutely.
With RealWorks and Georgia Film Academies, but maybe you can talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were certain, just the way that our industry works. It's a people industry. So, if you got in on a PA level and you found a group of people that found you valuable and wanted to invest in you. I mean, I myself worked with John Sales Group with Sarah Green and was an assistant coordinator or coordinator and a UPM. So within the space of like 3 years and 3 projects with them, I was able to learn and move up, in the small indie world. So sometimes that was the traditional way that people would just, find their group of people and be mentored. I think it has to be accelerated now. I think there really has to be, because I think there's a big gap. There's just a lack of trained people. So yeah, I'm surprised that the unions don't have something more formal, because it seems in their best interest to keep their rank and file, up and active and filled. But I know that individuals are filling in the gap. For instance, the script supervisors union is very concerned, because that's another area where, truly experienced people are aging out. And a lot of the individual script supervisors are creating their own programs, to train people. So yeah, what once was is no more. And, and there's always the danger too. I remember initially in some of the rebate states, it used to be, oh, well, so-and-so is saying he's a gaffer, but he's only worked on 2 features and he's not a gaffer in comparison to a gaffer who's been doing it for 10 years. So, you have to kind of feel your way through those situations. But people do want to use local labor, and that's a key, is finding whatever talent fits your show in the place you want to shoot it to save the most amount of money. So.
And not to bring up a sort of an unfortunate situation, but what happened in New Mexico with Rust, and sort of, again, not sort of critiquing everything because I don't remember all the facts, but there was the claims that maybe some folks weren't as trained as they should have been. And so obviously in some situations, lack of training could lead to loss of life. So this is not just about jobs and filling a job, but also protecting those on the set and helping make sure they stay safe. So I just wanted to jump to Tyrone. Maybe you can give us a bit of more about the EP Academy, the goal of the Academy, EP's investment in the educating the industry, and maybe talk about some of the courses that are being sought after and the growing library. What I really want you to talk about, the benefits of e-learning. Because I think one of the things that really has exploded during the pandemic was the ability to not have to sit in a classroom. But, that was sort of something we had to do, but it turned out to be sort of a great end result. So Tyrone, take it away.
Right. Thank you, Joe. So yes, with the EP Academy, initially we were provided an initiative to kind of take our live courses and convert them to an online e-learning atmosphere, just to make them more available to our clients. We were able to capitalize on the pandemic. During the year 2020, we were able to release some 12 courses during that time. Subsequently, since that time, we've been able to release some 19 courses, and we're slated to release this year another 12 courses on top of that. So far, we've had 16,000 plus enrollees in those courses. So our availability to service everyone, make these self-paced courses, make them very accessible to everyone, has been a great capitalization point for Entertainment Partners on a whole, I would say. We've had some different requests come in for courses. One is a how to budget course, which we're planning to actually get done and released in Q2, possibly Q3. And we're just trying to meet the need of the industry. By making our online courses available to everyone, we can touch more people. We have international people registering and taking our courses as well, which does help us kind of flex our wings a little bit and be able to touch people in different places. And it doesn't require a live trainer, which sometimes if you're training a team that's over in India or training a team that's over in Ireland, you can run into time zone issues and things like that. Well, with our EP Academy, we can kind of bypass that and still get the information over to our clients who need to use our products.
Great. So Amber, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the Next Generation Media Academy. I know the governor allocated $40 million to that creation. I know it's still sort of in development, but maybe you can talk about what we can expect from the Academy and how the unions are going to be involved. I know that we've been hearing a lot about the unions. And again, I want to make sure that the audience is aware that the unions are and do have training courses, and we'll do our best to make sure that that information is shared. But let us know what's going on in New Mexico and what we can expect from the Next Generation Media Academy.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I just need to say right off the bat that, it's listening to Jeffrey and his success with the Georgia Film Academy, reading about that as we realized we had to do something here to scale up crew quickly. Jeffrey's leadership and I picked his brain early on when we started doing our due diligence. And we really did see that spirit of collaboration and partnership was the key, as Jeffrey described. So we modeled after that. And we also looked at screen skills, and we thought we need to do something that utilizes and leverages existing assets. One of the great things about New Mexico since the incentive was introduced back in the early 2000s is we have 15 film and media post-secondary institutions or programs around the state. And that's pretty amazing for a state that really isn't that populous. But we thought we've got these schools in all these areas, rural areas, and how do we utilize these programs that have been around a long time? How do we partner with higher education? How do we partner with IATSE? We also, of course, with our film partners, Netflix and NBCU, they are a critical piece to the industry here, the future here, our workforce. So they are partners in this as well. And also we wanted to not just start from scratch. Let's use what we've got so we can do this quickly and effectively. And also as I think, John, you mentioned, there's so many barriers here to, underserved populations getting into the film industry, but so much untapped potential. So we looked at how do we address that? How do we really do outreach to tribal lands, and to a lot of these rural communities where, people want in the industry, but they don't have access or they don't have the ability to even come to Albuquerque and work on a show to get their feet wet. So we've also we've allocated some money for living stipends, and we're also aiming to really keep tuition very affordable and offer relief there as well. So this is truly accessible, that we're really uplifting our people here. We have, our population here for centuries has been one of artists and technicians and makers. And, when Georgia was speaking about construction and electricians and all these other crafts people and technicians here, it's just a gold mine of potential that we needed to find a way to bring people from these other industries into film, do it quickly, and pay them and enable them to do that quickly. So they're not, you don't have to be a trust funder or someone's nephew to get into this industry anymore. And one of the things we really tout here in a soft recruiting approach is you don't need, in so many jobs in this industry, as you all know, you do not need a college degree. So we also did not want to just create another film school. We have film schools here. We wanted to do something like GFA, where this is job competencies, and this is working in a real pipeline and getting paid and mentored, and it's a formalized process. So part of the education with the Next Generation Media Academy is a paid internship on a union production, and you will get hours toward membership in IATSE. And of course, make those connections that you could otherwise never make if you were, some guy from Farmington up in the northern part of the state, and you had all this wonderful work ethic and skills. But this is the way to expedite pathways to jobs and really scale up our crew that, Georgia, better than anyone how quickly we need to do it. Also with the Next Generation Media Academy, we're looking at, what's the industry looking like in 1 year, 5 years, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And where do we want New Mexico to be? What do we want to be the epicenter for? What's the future of this industry? What are the jobs that we need to already be prepping for and training for and hiring maybe faculty and staff for at the academy? So our first and primary focus is, of course, IATSE represented crafts that are, the demand is already great and we want to meet current deficiencies, but we are looking to also volumetric production. And we've got some studios looking to move here who are moving into AR, VR, extended reality production. All of the other supporting ancillary businesses and industries of film. So part of the academy is also, we're going to make sure it's nimble enough where we can start, planning and laying the foundation for the future of this industry. We've got IATSE advising on the curriculum. We've got Netflix and NBCU. They will be advising on the curriculum, as well as other, they've not been named or even decided upon yet, but we're going to have a board of advisors that can really help us stay relevant and stay ahead of the curve.
So Georgia, how does that sound to you as somebody who's, assessing current crew and future needs? What Amber said in terms of how she sees the Next Generation New Media Academy rolling out, anything jump out at you that seems to be missing or excites you?
I think it's all great. It really is. I'm before this seminar, I was not even aware of a lot of these the efforts that are going on. So I feel really encouraged by that. And it's a weird industry. A lot of people don't want to work a 12-hour day, especially throw in the commute. I think that's one of the reasons that the workforce has always been pretty limited. It's because I remember in Oklahoma talking to people, they were like, 12 hours a day. No, thank you. We're fine, and you find that a lot, in places that are mellower cities and people aren't driven by, whatever, or the cost of living is low enough that they, don't need to look for a higher wage. Anyway, I think I really applaud the efforts, and I'm glad to hear that there's so much going on. I think it would be nice if like the AMPTP and, all the unions would do something that was, bigger and inclusive and, rein all of the programs in so that people are, really learning the right way to do things. I mean, obviously you have professionals who are teaching the courses, which is great. But, safety is one thing we didn't really talk about, like is OSHA coming in to these states that, are how is the safety training, incorporated into this, and is it incorporated into this, and those things. I just feel like if there was a bigger, a bigger oversight, it'll help a lot.
Well, hopefully this webinar will bring a bit more visibility to all this. So Jeffrey, jumping back to the Georgia Film Academy and sort of the gold standard, maybe just tell us a bit more about some of the courses, and also how do you, or does the Academy source crew and train them and sort of get them onto shows? Maybe you can share that with all of us.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to share that, Joseph. Briefly, we were faced with a unique challenge in 2015, which was, how do you train people in large numbers to rapidly go to work in a film industry? So, think about that for a minute. I spent 20 plus years working in Los Angeles, where I saw what, Georgia, I know, people come on, little by little. In Georgia, back in 2014, 2015, 2016, we needed a whole crew base created almost out of whole cloth. And we needed to do that without upsetting those who are currently working in the business, and we needed to be inclusive. So it was a challenge. How did we do it? Broadly speaking, we looked at the two basic items that we believe you need to work in the film industry. One is training that makes you relevant and valuable to productions. And two, a foot in the door, access to the sets. So that's kind of where we started. If you want to look at, broadly what our mission is, there's three basic things that we focus on. One is leadership. We want to make sure that everybody's working together. I think of it, as service leadership. We want to make sure that all of our universities, technical colleges, and the public, and increasingly in the private sector, work together, row in the same direction, have this consolidated program. And we're able to do that in Georgia. Two is jobs. We're not just teaching, a film theory. There's very little conversation about story structure and the history of Fellini films in Georgia Film Academy classes. What you're learning, we have universities that do a great job of that, of course. What you're learning, of course, are fundamentals that lead to jobs intentionally. And finally, three, and this goes to what my friend Amber is saying, we are very focused as well on the future of the entertainment industry in Georgia and even more broadly, a permanent and sustainable entertainment business. And not to digress, but one of the wonderful things about training Georgians and putting them to work is it spreads all this economic activity that I'm referencing all around the state, which obviously, it should be obvious, supports our film tax credit and perpetuity. Putting Georgians to work makes provides support for the entire industry. Super briefly, Joseph, more specifically, there's Georgia Film Academy 1000 that all of our students take. Fundamentals of film and television production, grip, electric lighting, walkie-talkie protocol, soft skills, how to be of value to productions, as I say. And to George's earlier point, I think we lose about 30% of our students at that point, which is intentional. They decide, okay, this is really hard. I'm going to go back and finish my baccalaureate in marketing. Great, we want you to do that. Second step is what we call a craft course, where we train students in a so-called high-demand career area, which basically means they specialize now in we have grip and rigging, electric and lighting. We have a robust post-production program, scripting. We now have accounting, et cetera, and we're building out more of these classes. And finally, once the students take those first two classes, the universities and technical colleges can give them 6 credit hours per course, which is a lot, right? That's 12 credit hours for these courses. We now put them through the safety protocols classes. We absolutely run them through the OSHA 10 training. and also bespoke safety training that we've developed with our friends at the union. If they're still with us, and about 30 to 40% of our students are, we now place them in a union-covered craft paid internship where they're going to go to work on a Marvel movie in a grip department. They're going to go to work on Walking Dead in an electric department. They're going to go to work on a Fast 8 movie in the production design department. They're going to get paid. 98% of our students are paid. I think the average payment is about $14 an hour. And finally, the cost of the program is $125 a credit hour. So if it's 18 hours long, you're spending about $22.50 if you're paying out of pocket for it. But if you figure in the paid internship, the bottom line is show up with your closed-toed shoes. The state provides everything else, and maybe you're spending a couple $100. And we're going to put you in a job that the MPA tells us averages about $84,000 a year in Georgia. So again, it's about partnership for us. It's about getting everyone to work together. And if there's a single thing that inspires me regarding what I'm doing, it's getting folks to come together and work on this.
That's amazing. So, John, I wanted to spend a few more minutes on RealWorks. I know you talked a bit about it already, but how does one get into your program, and maybe walk us through the process for being a student, going from student to work study to maybe full-time and permanent work?
Okay, great. Yeah, so so RealWorks is a traditional youth development organization. That's our deepest history. So we partner with New York City public schools and middle schools and high schools to get students into our after-school programs, where they're paired with a mentor and they make films, and they can make films as long as they're in high school and beyond, and grow into our community. Through the Media Makers program, which is the workforce program, there are a few ways in. One is through the partnership with the City of New York and the City University of New York. We provide workforce training and multiple paid internships to students who are enrolled in the City University of New York. We work with about 13 out of 25 campuses across the city to recruit interns to that program. And then the job training programs are much more open. You know, the grips that the people who are interviewing right behind me today to be in the grip training with the IATSE, that's really an open call. We have a lot of community partnerships in New York. There's a role for organizations like RealWorks, educators like us, in this. If there's maybe the most important role is that we actually we're embedded in the community, so we can find this talent, people who are not only young women and men and people of color who are interested in the industry, but they have experience, because New York never lets you down in terms of talent. And I'm sure any really great city is the same way. The talent is out there, and we're good at finding that. We did a partnership with Paramount last year that's been renewed, called the Content for Change Academy. And it was the first time Paramount had created an apprentice program for young people who weren't enrolled in a four-year college. They just had no way of knowing how to find out of school, out of work young people who would be qualified. If they put an ad out, they would have 10,000 resumes. They wouldn't know how to sort it. So they essentially hire us to go out and find the young people. And we have our community partnerships, our schools, the colleges, great organizations like the Made in New York program that the mayor's office supports, a lot of programs, and our peers. And we can find really talented young people who really want to work in production or post-production. The short outcome of the Paramount program was they had 7 students in the pilot. They paid them for a 3-month apprenticeship, and 5 got full-time jobs in one of the brands as a result, which is a really great outcome. So they were so excited they're renewing the next year in New York and LA. But it took many years of being in partnership with them to get them comfortable. They have a very campus to career way of recruiting. And that's one way schools, like Brooklyn College, which is a wonderful campus, but it was not on the short list of film schools they might be recruiting from. We're able to bring community college students or students who are out of school, out of work into the mix, and they get opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. And it's not really the fault of Paramount. They just have no idea how to do that. But organizations like ours, because we're involved in the community and we have a deep network, can do that. And I want to talk to you about the other union trainings we're doing because they're very, very specific, but I can't yet. We're working with two locals, but it was very highly specialized training, skills that people needed to have. And we were able to find them and have an incredible program of folks who never thought of the film industry as a career path for applying their craft that they had learned or practiced as professionals. Now they're on a mentored union pathway to work in the entertainment industry. So it's very exciting to play that role, which is a unique role and not easily duplicated role in the larger ecosystem of the unions and the employers and finding those talented young people.
Well, as always, when time does fly, when we're having fun, I just wanted to, before Natalie rattle off as many questions as possible, I just really wanted to sort of highlight, because we touched on it, is that, again, where there's such a need right now is production accountants and production accounting clerks. I know that, John, you've been involved in sort of helping create accounting clerk positions, and EP has production accounting courses, and Entertainment Partners is going to be even more aggressive in trying to sort of connect the dots and helping people go from the classroom or the virtual classroom to jobs. So just want to sort of highlight that. And I also know that there's so many questions out there in terms of how do I find work? So, there's the Entertainment Partners resume portal. There's the Facebook production accounting groups that are always looking for accountants and accounting clerks. There's a Ray Crew, there's Cruvy, there's Holly List. There's a lot out there. And again, I'll try to post as much as I can on EP's production community, but I wanted Natalie to try to throw out as many questions as possible before we lose our esteemed panelists and lose our very interested viewers.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Yes, we did get quite a few questions. I'm actually going to try to pull these together by theme since we did get a few repeats. And one of the things that I've seen coming through over and over again, we're doing a lot of discussion right now about, emerging people who are getting into the industry, who are, going through school. But a lot of people are writing in and asking about, how do I re-enter, or how do I get into the film industry? How do I get training when I'm making a career change midlife, where I decide I want to try a totally different industry, or I'm coming back from, taking time off to raise children. Could each of you maybe talk about the opportunities and how you are attracting people that are maybe mid-career, midlife, who just now are realizing that this is the path that they want to go down? So Amber, how about we start with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually a big part of our model for the Next Gen Media Academy. Not only are students in the existing programs allowed to apply to the Next Gen Media Academy, but we're also going to actively recruit, again, people without college degrees or totally different kinds of degrees, and any skill or work experience that's transferable. If we don't know the exact parameters, but say 3 to 5 years of work experience, those people can apply too. So we're actually just as excited about young people getting in the industry as we are about people who are maybe changing careers, maybe older, maybe have been a stay-at-home mother or dad. We feel like that the work experience and the desire to be in the industry, and if you're cut out for it, that's again how we can, double, triple our crew and actually bring in. We actually really try and target vets as well. We have a special workforce training program for vets. But women and men and mothers and former business executives, construction company owners, like all of it. As we know, there are so many transferable skills into the film industry, and that's the beauty and why the governor, this is one of our key industry sectors, is it's truly accessible to so many people without a college degree. So the Next Gen Media Academy will indeed fill that gap where you can come in and get a fast track, deep dive into a specific craft and get that paid internship and the connections, and you're off to the races.
Great.
Jeffrey or John, would you like to take a moment?
Go ahead, John. I'll go after you.
Well, we're more of a youth program, but increasingly as we do projects that are highly skilled, career development has gone up. And many of our recent participants are coming from, say, construction into grip or electric training, or into other skills I can't yet describe. So it's definitely happening, and it's definitely skill based. It's really so that's where we are. But I'm sure you're doing a lot more robust work with folks that over 19 years old.
So in Georgia, there's three ways to get into the Film Academy. One is through a university, which will give you the college credit. We don't give credit, we give certification. Two is through a technical college, same. They'll provide you college credits. We don't get involved in that. They register the students, universities, technical colleges come to us. A third of our students, however, come from the public sector. They simply register through one of our universities or technical colleges as so-called Con Ed or continuing education students. They pay the same $750 per course, $125 a credit hour. And if you look at a Georgia Film Academy class of 25 students, as I say, 1/3 is going to be so-called adult age Con Ed, 1/3's USG, a university age, and 1/3 is technical college students. And by the way, coming from all over the state. So, wonderfully a diverse group of students all working and dreaming together.
Tyrone?
Yes. Yes. Well, we offer access to our production accounting 101 and 201 courses. These courses are career based courses. They actually allow for people to kind of get their feet wet. We have an introductory course that kind of brings people along, teaches them the basics of television and production accounting, as where with our 201 course, which is a more advanced course that gets, it does a more deeper dive into television concepts and processes and things like that. So those courses are career courses like Jeffrey mentioned. He mentioned the price that they pay. Our courses are $199, and they do come with certifications as well.
What advice would you give to anyone sort of looking to sort of what a career change, or, I mean, from your perspective as somebody who's hiring crew?
If they're looking for a career change, my advice to them is take the step. Don't be afraid. In my role as a product trainer, I do deal with a lot of production accountants. I do speak with a lot of people that are trying to get their feet into the industry. Some of them are hesitant, but it's been great to be on this panel with you guys and hear some of the programs that you guys offer. I think that my encouragement is to really just tell them to take the steps, stay committed. It's a great career. Being someone who grew up in the inner city, I didn't know that these jobs even existed. Right? I'm an LA kid. Born and raised. I didn't know that this was an opportunity for me coming up. And John, I do appreciate that you guys are reaching out to the youth. I think that's a good start, but everyone here is doing good work.
And I just want to add one point, because I know that when I mention the word accounting or accountants, people's sort of eyes glaze over. And so it's not the world of debits and credits, but more of a world of cost accounting. And a very learnable skill as well. So, Natalie, do we have any more time for questions?
Sure. I'm just going to ask one more question that we've gotten a few people writing in about, and that is accessibility as far as how things are being treated, during the COVID and post-COVID world. I know personally, being very familiar with EP Academy, that everything is virtual. But for the other training programs, are people meeting in person again? Is everything still virtual? How have you been adapting the programming to kind of meet where we are in the world today? John, I'll let you start.
We one of the first projects we wanted to do during COVID was launching our post-production coordinator training program with HBO, now the Warner Media Access to Action post-production training program. The names get longer and longer, but we launched it carefully as a virtual program and was very successful. And the second time we ran it as a bi-coastal program in New York and LA. We've now done, I think, 4 coordinator training programs and 1 supervisor training program, and they've all been virtual and very successful. I think the last one was hybrid. I think we were able to have some live visits, which always helps. The studio mechanics work has to be in person, and that's been completely on hold until right now. But the rest of our program has been hybrid, and we also created a whole workforce readiness learning library, courses that we turned into remote courses that Warner Media essentially helped us create and license for all their access to action trainees across the company to have access to communication, collaboration, self-direction, those essential workforce skills, work readiness skills. So it's been a boon to us, and kind of a force multiplier. We're able to serve more people in more places, and sometimes it has to be hands-on and in person. And now it's great to have that option again. So I think it's supercharged our work, I'd say.
Yeah, I was going to just mention that, one of the silver linings of COVID-19 for us is with the training programs that we currently do through my office is a free production assistant 1-day boot camp. And we launched that back in the fall and realized, we've got to make this remote right now and virtual, and let's see how it goes. And it's actually been a huge success, happening almost every Saturday. It's all virtual, taught by a local wonderful experienced producer. But what I think is the best benefit of that is we track who registers for these and who completes them, and they go into a special database, and then they are eligible for another workforce program after that. We can talk about that on another panel, but we see that the people registering are speckled all across the state. We're seeing people from tribal lands. We're seeing people from towns of 10 to 50 people taking this class. And that would not have happened, a couple of years ago if this was in person in Albuquerque or Santa Fe. So we also did a production accounting training class in collaboration with Netflix. And that was all virtual. And a lot of those people are working today on films too. So we're actually going to keep that virtual ongoing training probably for the long haul, in addition to the Academy.
We similarly saw silver lining in Georgia, and briefly in April of 2020, when everything shut down in North America regarding production. We created the Georgia Film Academy COVID compliance course in lockstep with the unions and the CDC. It's on our website now and free for anybody who wants to use it. Crews use it to work in a COVID environment. We all went back to work, and by the fall of 2020 in Georgia. And the Film Academy, of course, because we're based at the university system, had to run our classes online. And we had a lot of instructors saying, you cannot teach which way the knuckle on a grip stand goes if you're doing it online. But guess what? We learned that we could. So we've created this hybrid program. It's been a learning experience for a lot of us. And we still have students show up in person if they're now taking courses online, which they do in parts of the state where they can't come to production sites. And those students will show up and do in-person safety standards. Obviously, we want to make sure they know how to operate electrical items before we certify them and send them out. So we're still learning, but we do believe, like Amber says, this has been a silver lining for us.
Well, believe it or not, we have to wrap this up, but I'm going to actually wrap this up with Georgia Chianese and ask her if you had to give one last bit of advice to someone who's starting their career or is looking to sort of transition. What would you suggest?
What would I suggest? I would suggest it is a specific kind of lifestyle. It's very inclusive. It draws you in. It's an amazing community. And, as long as you know what you like, because there's so many options, there's features, there's televisions, there's documentaries, there's, commercials, there's just so much that is encompassed in the entertainment and sort of our skill of what we do, production and technically. Just be specific about what your goal is so that you make sure you get into an area that you're going to enjoy, because a lot of times people they want to get in, they do something, the extras casting, but they really wanted to be a cinematographer. There's a lot of things you have to be careful about. Be specific and then dive in, because having a diverse baseline, understanding how the whole system works, then helps you get to where you want to be, have your mentors, have your people that you're I want to be that guy, who's producing that movie. And how did he get there? You can probably find out and just, find your road. But I just love that you guys have the first steps, that you're able to really get people in the industry. And I do have to say, I don't know who's not paying interns, because I thought a few years ago we paid everybody who works on the set. But I just want to throw that in. But I think it's great. I think you guys are, I hope the other production bases are learning from you and taking this seriously, because we need it.
I'm going to turn this back over to Natalie, but I want to thank you. You're all great. I want to thank you all for your time today. We went a little over. And I want to thank my panelists as well as those watching, and stay tuned. More to come.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Thank you all. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions today. We did get many, many questions and unfortunately ran out of time to address all of them, but we will keep the discussion going over on the productioncommunity.com. Joe kindly mentioned this during the webinar today. So if you head over, you can visit our production forum where you can connect with industry experts, and we will post questions and answers from our panel. We also would encourage you to visit ep.com/master series, where you can visit a recording of today's webinar along with our entire Master Series library. We have over 60 webinars posted, ranging from topics related to incentives and legislation, COVID-19 analysis, tips and tricks for payroll accountants or anyone in the payroll tax world, and legislation and regional spotlights on what's going on in regions such as New Mexico, Georgia, New York, and others. So please do visit us at ep.com/master series. And as we discussed today, we have the e-learning academy, EP Academy, available on the EP website, where you can visit over a dozen courses, including Production Accounting 101 and 201. And the EP Academy can help you take the next step in your career or level up on new skills and technology. We have a wide range of courses available, and we look forward to connecting with you. So please reach out to us and we'll get you started. A special thank you to all of our fantastic panelists for joining us today. And thank you for staying with us when we did run over on time. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. We hope that you all stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Master Series.